Welcome back to the Next Step In podcast, where we explore the people and programs helping Hoosiers take the next step in education, their career, and in life. I'm your host, Joe Glover. In this episode, Eddie and I will be talking about a powerful pathway that's changing the game for high school students across Indiana. It goes by several names, but most often it's referred to as early college. Our guest today is Steve Combs, Director of Early College at the Center for Excellence in Leadership of Learning, or CEL. CEL was founded in 2001 at the University of Indianapolis. CEL focuses on education initiatives to advance outcomes and opportunities for Indiana students and educators. With nearly 3 decades in education as a teacher, coach, principal, and now statewide leader, Steve brings a wealth of insight and passion to his work, helping students earn college credit before they graduate high school. In today's episode, we'll dive into the early college programs that are creating real opportunities for all Indiana students and talk about how schools can adopt and expand this model to drive post-secondary success. So thanks for joining us. Let's take that next step. Steve, welcome to Next Step In. We are so happy to have you here, and thank you so much for taking time today to talk to us. We have so much to talk about, and I think that this episode is really going to be one that many parents and students are going to benefit from.
Well, I hope so. Thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be here and representing CEL at the University of Indianapolis. So appreciate you guys inviting us on and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be a great one, and this is a conversation that obviously is one that means a lot to me, but probably means even more to Mr. Bobbitt here, Eddie, who works as a high school guidance counselor at New Albany High School in the southern part of the state, and he keeps telling me these wonderful stories about early college and how they're helping students across the state, and so we really look forward to diving in on that. And Eddie, I know you probably have a million different stories you can talk about with this type of program.
No question. Dual credit opportunities continue to provide opportunities for students to earn credits and really expand on their opportunities when they pursue a post-secondary degree. Just yesterday, I had a parent post on Facebook and tag me that her son, after meeting with an academic advisor, is headed to a university and has already got 83 credit hours from their high school experience. Now they're working with their academic advisor on potentially earning 2 degrees so that when they're 22 years old, they can leave with 3 degrees. It's unbelievable.
Wow. So Steve's going to tell us about how this happens and about all the reasons why this is a good thing for students and maybe even talk about some of the things that students need to and parents might need to watch out for. So Steve, you've had a long and impactful career in education. I'm kind of curious kind of what first drew you into this early college model and maybe how you would explain the model to someone who's just tuning into this podcast today and might be learning about this concept of early college or dual credit in Indiana for the first time. Maybe this is the first time they've had exposure to it.
Yeah, for sure, Joe. I came across this in kind of an interesting way in a former life, as you said, and I appreciate you putting it in a way long instead of veteran or distinguished, or the favorite word that I like to use is seasoned. I was 27 years in K-12 education, and in a former life, I was a basketball coach, and my big brother, also a basketball coach, he was at Milan for a very long time, and we're huge fans, right? Go Pacers up here in June. What a took our summer away, and Ty getting hurt. We don't want to get into that. But in 2013, Joe, I'm laying on my couch and I'm watching the Hoosiers play. Our family are Hoosier fans, and all of a sudden, the last Zeller, Cody Zeller, is playing, and the announcers are talking, and they said he's going to graduate early because his high school had an early college program. And, where I'm from, where I was principal, was Vincennes. And if you know the Zellers, they're from Washington, and henceforth why I'm no longer coaching. And so we had to play them in the sectional, the two older brothers, right? And so when I hear that on TV, I kind of sit up and I think, if Washington High School has an early college program, why don't we have that at Vincennes? And so I reached out to my current employer, the Center of Excellence in Leadership of Learning, It's called Cell. We're housed at the University of Indianapolis to get information on early college, and it rolled from there. We went to new schools training in 2014. We were able to become involved in a grant in 2015, and then again in 2019. But long story short, I learned about it while watching a college basketball game, and because I felt that it would be good for our students in Vincennes, we engaged in it fully and been a part of it ever since, both at the K-12 level and now the last 3.5 years at Cell at the University of Indianapolis.
First off, you get an award because anyone that teaches in K-12 for that many years, I think, automatically gets an award. That's impressive work, and Eddie knows that probably even better than I do. But as someone that knows how important that work is in our communities, thank you for your service. I don't think we ever tell our teachers thank you enough for everything that they do and all they do for our students. So thank you for that, first and foremost.
Well, you're welcome, and it was my pleasure. It was, I tell people that I was a teacher and a coach for 13 years, and then I was a administrator for 13 and a half. What I was able to experience in those days, you can't take away. However, the best part of my job now, you guys, is that we travel around the state and we get to go to where Eddie is at New Albany and visit the Bulldogs and Dr. Jenkins, all the way from New Albany to Hobart to Fort Wayne, East Allen, down into Evansville, and all spots in between, from Shoals to Sheridan. Okay, from 250 students to 3,100 at Penn. And when we get to visit schools, I see what great is going on in the classroom. I see motivated professionals. I see great kids. I see people going above and beyond the duty that's called for of them. It's the best part of the job is to work with people that want to do right by our students in Indiana. I absolutely love it. It's a bright spot even on the road because when you get there, you're seeing excellent people, educators, and excellent programs that are taking place. So, hey, you're welcome for my service, but I want to turn it around and say the people that I get to deal with when we're out and about on school campuses is refreshing and keeps my bucket full for sure.
Well, I kind of laugh because when I think about the miles you're putting in across the state of Indiana, if I was a basketball coach in the college around Indiana right now, I think I might be tapping you on the shoulder as a good assistant coach. I think you're seeing some good talent as you travel around around the state there, Steve.
Well, it's a lot of fun now. My daughter's a cheerleader up here in the Indianapolis area, and now I just get to go as a spectator. So, and I've kind of fallen back in love with high school sports because of that. I always tell people I'm divorced from basketball. I was married to her for a very long time, and we had a divorce, and now I only visit when my kids see her. But I'm falling back in love with it again. I don't know about coaching anymore. That was a long time ago. I'm totally bought into what's going on now. But yeah, it's great.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you is you talked about your administrative experience when you got in, being a high school principal, and I just was curious about your experience launching an early college program and maybe what inspired that decision. You talked a little bit about how important it was, and I know we talked about what the program actually is, but can you talk about from your role as an administrator in a high school why it was so important to you to get something started like this and where you've seen it be beneficial?
Because that's a great question. Because if you're offering dual credits, that's fantastic, right? Eddie talked a little bit about its impact, but what drew me in and what drew us in was instead of having random acts of dual credits, now you have something to work toward to with the Indiana College Core policy in Indiana in terms of dual credit is fantastic with that Indiana College Core, which is that package of 30 hours that can transfer to any public university and several private schools in Indiana as well. With that package, that gives students either a head start or a leg to even. It creates more life chances for students. And so what motivated us to start with is that it created this package or something that our students could work for this positive, meaningful credential that then they could pack with them as they moved on post high school. And the other thing is that with the proper supports, the framework that we are fortunate to train schools on is a good thing, and it's been proven the data speaks for itself. And what I mean by that is that the schools that we're fortunate to partner with, those students go to college at a rate of 79%. And Eddie being in New Albany Floyd schools knows that, right? As you saw last week, the latest, or it might have been earlier this week, I can't remember, the latest commission data came out, and Indiana's college going rate was 51.7. Now, I will say that's all work that the high school partners that we have done, right? We have 68 endorsed early college high schools. That's a process that's tedious, but it's meaningful. And if schools implement this framework, they continue to support their students, that number will continue to grow. So back to your question, how we got started was I wanted our students to be able to earn that credential that travels, number one, and we wanted to impact more students and giving them access to that ability through the supports that are created through implementing this framework.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Steve, one question that I have is that you know better than most that teachers and educators, sometimes our jobs are not the easiest. like, and sometimes it's difficult to fill roles, right, in our schools. How is Indiana ensuring that the dual credit instructors are meeting the necessary credential requirements without creating any staffing barriers for our high schools?
That's also a great question. We talk about three things to start with while you're implementing the Indiana College Core, right? And I like to list them by the numbers 2, 6, and 7. So the first thing that you need to do is create your crosswalk, your high school college crosswalk. Eddie, you're familiar with that, right? Your high school course and how that lines up with the college course. The second thing is leadership and staffing. That is the most, if not right up there, it's very close to the most difficult thing for schools to be able to do, is to recruit and retain teachers who have the credential to teach those college level courses. Now, there's a couple ways how this works. SEL is fortunate to offer two programs, STEM Teach Indiana and Teach Dual Credit Indiana, where that is funded through various sources where teachers can sign up and take the coursework and become credentialed, because you either have to have a master's in your content area or a master's plus 18 level hours in that content area. So master's in education plus 18 if you're teaching biology and certain courses. Okay. So back to the question, how is Indiana ensuring that? Well, sometimes it comes down to the district, right? And for teachers, I think a magic wand thing for me would be that districts would incentivize teachers not only to teach the classes, the dual credit, the AP classes, the classes that are a little bit more rigorous and take more work, but also to incentivize taking the courses, earning that master's. It's a difficult thing for districts to do, especially in today's world when education is, the financing of that is somewhat tenuous. However, our higher ed partners in Indiana are strong, and they are committed to helping schools provide this Indiana College Core. And so you have, when schools run into those holes, they work with their higher ed partners on where classes could be taken. And some schools are writing up contracts to say, we'll pay for you to go back to school if you stay here for 5 years. There's all kinds of different ways to go. It's not to say that it's not hard, because it is. But if it can happen at Rising Sun, which is south of you guys, believe it or not, south and east and south, right? If it can happen at Rising Sun, where they it becomes part of their culture, right? The early college becomes part of what their school is, what it is that they do. If it can happen there, that work can take place in other communities as well. It's not easy, and there are programs out there. You work with Ivy Tech, and how can we get this person credentialed? They'll point you in the direction. You can work with CEL and the two programs that we have, IU and their advanced college project. There are ways that you can offer IU coursework while a teacher is working on those classes to become fully credentialed. Okay, Vincennes University can work the same kind of processes. Those higher eds will help to fill those holes while the districts themselves work on getting teachers into those pipelines. So although there's not one easy answer to that, there are several options to that. And that's something that we do at CEL is help schools finding those pathways to get the teachers. But ultimately, those dual credit, those early college, those AP teachers, if you get young folks that want to advance, this is a good way to become, a leader at your school in the instructional realm is becoming that dual credit AP early college teacher. So it's not easy, and it's one of the largest barriers for schools to be actually to engage in that. But I would encourage schools, and we do encourage schools we work with. There are ways to work with that until you get to where you want to be. And then we talk about building the pipeline. And when you're recruiting and when you're hiring and interviewing, are you willing at some point to go back and get your master's degree in psychology? Are you willing to do that? This is the program that we have. And so it's a good thing for districts to kind of get into because it changes that conversation that you're having with young teachers as they come in, right? You have this culture, you have these processes where you're going to help them to get their masters, and in turn, they're going to help your school and ultimately your students into earning these credentials of value while they're in school.
Awesome. Next question that I have is, let's flip it back to the students. So sometimes when we're promoting the ICC and the AGS, I feel like one of my jobs as a post-secondary counselor is to educate our families that it's not an all or nothing thing, right? Talk a little bit about the opportunities for students. Students don't have to earn the ICC or have to earn the AGS. They can pick and choose, and the value that has on their post-secondary degree obtainment.
Absolutely. I think I love to talk about this, and I know we only have an hour today, and I could spend a very long time with this, but I like to talk with school leaders I can talk about this as a parent, as a former school leader, and now as a representative of this organization that I work with now, the center at UIndy. As a parent, neither one of my sons earned the ICC, and it came down to a speech class, right? And you'll know what I'm talking about here, Eddie. Speech is one of the most difficult dual credit classes to fill. It has to have a master's in communications. Those folks are hard to come by. And the speech class that they had to take was going to be online in order to earn that. Now, quite honestly, as a parent, had the incentive been there where that $1,200 would have come to the high school that I was in charge of, then dad probably would have pushed him to take the speech class. But I always like to tell people that, um, my two sons, their credits that they took, although they didn't get the prescribed 30, it was well over 30. And that helped my two sons. One of them graduated with a master's and a bachelor's in 5 years, and the other one graduated from a public university way out of state, Florida, University of Florida, in 3.5 years because every one of those credits transferred. Every single one. The older one went to a private school in Indiana. My middle child went to the University of Florida, and they both reaped the benefits of dual credit. Okay. So even though, I'm speaking of that as a parent, right? Now, ultimately, you move on to the next level as principal, as post-secondary counselor, Eddie. All of those, especially if they are on the core transfer library in Indiana, okay, and where you guys are located down near Kentucky, I am sure that Northern Kentucky I'm not sure about Louisville. I'm sure UK takes most, if not all, of those CTL classes, right? As long as those classes are on that core transfer library, there's a pretty darn good chance that they're going to be accepted most places. Okay. Most places. There are going to be some colleges that aren't going to take any of that, but let's say most. For most students, that's a good thing, right? And so even if you don't get, like, we count early college graduates and for our data, if they get 15 or more. Okay, think about that in terms of when you guys were in school. That's one semester, right? That's more life chances. That's, you've got either a little bit ahead or you've gotten your footing back, right? So that's what we count. But ultimately for us, we try to train schools on helping students to earn that ICC, because that credential travels as a package. Okay? But if you don't get it, those courses, even through your CTE uh, sometimes, but if, as long as it's on that core transfer library, in most cases, you're going to be in a good situation.
Yeah, no question. And um, other aspect of that I try to push to parents and students is that, yeah, we want you to earn the credits. We want you to save time and money when you go off to a university, but ultimately, no education is wasted. So you are going to strengthen your abilities and your critical thinking skills. And to use a basketball analogy, right? It's like a strength of schedule type thing. So you take a couple tougher courses, you're going to be better prepared for the postseason. You take a couple dual credit courses, you're going to be better ready for post-secondary degrees. So even if we're not earning a ton of credits, we're still challenging ourselves a little bit better. And there's incredible value to that.
Absolutely. Well stated.
Steve, I love your perspective too as a parent, because I think that when I think about our listeners and maybe some of those parents who are listening to this podcast that are thinking, what is my student the type of student that can benefit from early college or these credentials? And I'd be just curious to your take on what students do the best, with this kind of model. Who are the right students for this type of opportunity? Is it really open and for anyone? I mean, kind of how would you help advise maybe other parents or colleagues if they have kids that are considering taking these types of courses?
All students, all means all, right? And so that credential of value that we train schools on to help them to get students prepared to earn that ICC, all students can benefit from it. But I would tell you, Joe, that a place like New Albany High School, they're going to have students that are going to earn that ICC. I don't want to say on their own, but they're not going to necessarily need that framework of the 8 core principles that we train on. Every school that implements this framework has a group of students that they'd like to target, a group of students that have the potential to go to college that maybe didn't think it was possible. Okay. So every school community has to come up with that. Like, what is the group that we see here that has with a potential that can make it with the proper supports, then could earn this credential of value moving forward. And so to start with, the framework works for all students. In our smaller schools, the Shoals, the Sheridans, oh my gosh, of course, the West Washingtons, okay, they have what we like to call an open cohort. And that means that anyone that qualifies becomes part of their early college, okay? And our processes and our services for those schools are, okay, you have this group, how do we expand it out and get more students to qualify? Whether that's through GPA, whether that's through Ivy Tech's knowledge assessment, whether that's through AccuPlacer, PSAT, grade point average, however it is that we have a tool that we share with schools that need it, a early college readiness rubric that can be used as a measure of assessment. But our smaller schools, they can't have necessarily the recruited cohort because of scheduling. Okay. There might be one teacher in the building that can teach certain courses, and there's only 6 or 7 periods a day, or if you're on a block 4, whatever it is your schedule, it becomes a scheduling issue. So they have open cohorts, and then the challenge then becomes, how are you getting more students into that program into your early college, right? Your larger schools, they have recruited cohorts. And so that means that they are monitoring in middle school or freshman year. Here's this group that's in the middle. If we got some supports around them, we'd like to move this group forward together. Okay. We'd like to put these supports around them. So that's another way. So that can be your bigger school, some of your bigger, let's go back to the IHSA because everyone knows this, right? That's some of your 3A and 4A models. In Indiana, I'll get back to that in a second. I want to talk about like how Indiana differs from other states. So you have the open cohort for the really small, you have recruited cohort. That's kind of where we're fortunate to be involved with another rural grant, a second iteration of what's called the Rural Early College Network, where they're going to have a group of students that they're going to surround supports around, and then there's going to be a study done on what supports are working. Then we have products that go out to other schools like, hey, implement this and this can happen, or it could happen, this could be good for you, right? That's the whole research study. Then in Indiana, there's also school within a school, like Center Grove. Okay, Center Grove High School on the south side of Indianapolis, they have a hallway that's set up as their early college, right? They have a principal that's in charge of their early college, a counselor, an admin. They have teachers that are just teaching early college classes. So that's another structure that we support. There's one in Evansville where their public high schools, North Central, Bosse, Wrights, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting one, Harrison, okay? There are all kinds of programs in Evansville, but if they go to their early college program, they go take their classes on campus at Ivy Tech on First Avenue down there, okay? That's the only one in Indiana that's set up like that. They have high school teachers there. Wendy McNamara is the director of it. They do a lot of awesome things, but it's the only one in Indiana where that's set up like that. And then there are two which are full. The entire building is early college high school. That's East Allen near Fort Wayne, where those students in that district, they withdraw from their home high school and they enroll at East Allen University High School. East Allen has its own number. Okay. They have their own student council. They have their own extracurricular things. Okay. And the other one that's like that is Ben Davis University here, where students withdraw from Ben Davis High School, go to BDU. It's a building, every student that goes there. Okay. Now, what separates or what makes Indiana a little different is that there are those are 5 different structures, right? And in your major early college states like Texas and North Carolina, school students go to early college on community college campuses. Okay. So we have all these most of ours are taking place in traditional high schools. All right. We're fortunate to work with charter, public, private, rural, urban, suburban, all of them, because the framework can be utilized and implemented in any setting.
That's really helpful because I don't even think I realized that. I didn't realize that we had that many structures to do this. So I mean, you're educating me for sure on this and how that plays out, and obviously I'm sure there's benefits and to different ones, right? And I'm certainly things that are better at some that maybe are worse at others and the different structures. But I guess the thing that I would assume is that the local control, kind of the local decision making, kind of gets to happen to what works best for those students in that community, because as we know, Indiana is made up of very vastly, like you were saying, vastly different types of communities. So there's some flexibility there to let communities decide kind of what works for them and their families.
Absolutely. We've had 2 iterations of the Rural Early College Network where there were 20 schools over a 5-year period that went through an intensive. It was a research project, but all kinds of supports went out to those schools. We're fortunate enough to be awarded with another one of those that started last January. But in the interim of that, we also had from the state the Urban College Acceleration Network. So we had overall early college, and then we had what we called UCAN, which was urban, which worked with 16 schools in the state that fall under the federal code of urban. And then now we're going to be engaged in a total of 35 schools, which are considered rural, which hopefully at the end we have 15 new schools that have come on board, that we can get those folks endorsed and moving in this same direction to get to that goal of 75% by 2035, or 75% of Indiana adults earning a post-high school credential by 2035. Ultimately, we all want to see a more educated populace.
Yeah, when we talk about that a lot on this podcast, but how important that is, that education really is kind of the thing that really kind of delineates, communities, right? On who is the most successful from an economic development standpoint. Where do you have the least amount of Medicaid reliance? Where, what are the different, poverty? You look at crime. I mean, you look at pretty much all the metrics, and the higher educated populations are those that deal with less of those negative indicators. So we know that in Indiana, we've got to do a better job of having a more educated workforce. We need to make sure that college going rate's higher than 50% through the years, so that we can continue to make sure that the state continues to thrive. One of the questions that I was trying to get a sense of, because you've kind of hinted at this, but how many high schools in the state of Indiana have some sort of early college or dual credit? I mean, are we at mass now where we have most of them that are doing something, or where are we at statewide when we think about this?
Most are doing something, if not all are offering the minimum, right? Last year, it became legislated that you either had to offer the ICC, the Indiana College Corps, or you had to have a plan on how you were going to implement the ICC. And that is supported by legislation that incentivizes schools to be able to do that. $1,200 for an ICC, $2,500 for an associate's degree, $40 pulled per dual credit. Now that can't be stackable, right? You can't get 1,200 for the ICC and then another 2,500 is whatever the greatest is. But as I said at the very beginning, the ICC is a great currency for students. And to your point, Joe, just to kind of go back on what you said, let's say that you want to go into a trade, all right? You want to go into construction, or you want to ultimately do an apprenticeship and become a plumber, an electrician. All fantastic jobs, all very meaningful, very important to our communities, our state, our country. Add that ICC to it. And as you're working in plumbing, as you're working in construction, you might have had, you want to go back, you want to own the plumbing business, or you want to own the construction business. You've got that start now, that you were able to earn that while you were in high school. That gives you just another card in your wallet, another dollar to play, right? The more education, the better. So yes, plumbing, yes, any post-secondary. The key is, or what I would encourage folks is, earning that ICC. That's currency, that's in your pocket, whether you use it now or 10 years from now, go with that, right? In your area, small Henryville is an endorsed early college high school. Okay. And so they have students that want to go into trades. They have students that want to go to IUB. That ICC is that currency that can help them to do either one, and can help them in both circumstances.
Yeah, it's good stuff. One of the questions that I have, and I want to make sure that we give an opportunity to flex on other people or other states when we need to, right? How does Indiana compare to other states, maybe in the region or the country, when it comes to students earning dual credit opportunities? Like, how do we compare?
We are head to head with Idaho, Eddie. We are either one or two with Idaho in terms of dual credit earnings. Yes, believe it or not,
First and second?
first and second. Yes. Our policy is fantastic for earning, right? We have great higher ed partners, IU and all campuses, Vincennes, Ivy Tech, Ball State is getting involved, Indiana State, USI, name it. Okay. Purdue Northwest. Okay. I'm going to forget someone and probably get emails. But I'm going to make a blanket statement that our higher ed are outstanding partners. And we also have a great policy to back it up, right? The incentives for the schools to offer it. There are always things that all people from all ends are going to want to make it perfect, but we are one or two with Idaho, and I'm on a network with some folks from around the country, and that was the first thing that I said to the person from Idaho is, we're coming for you. We want to be first. But Eddie, to that end, we've got to get past the dual credit earnings to finishing those things, whether that's an ASG, whether that's a bachelor's, whether that is a technical certificate. We have to take what we're doing, in our realm. In your realm is our high school partners, those students. We're hoping, and research backs it, that they are moving toward and have a better degree of completion than those who don't take dual credit. But we're either first or second with Idaho.
Now first off, we know we got a rivalry with Idaho. You don't
Right.
want this, Idaho. You don't want this smoke. Number
Mm-hmm.
one. Number two, we really need to market this better. Like when we're number one, we need shirts that say like dual credit national champions and with like the state of Indiana or something. Like, Steve, can we make this happen?
I'll do my best, but what I would say to that is that, it's the kind of the same thing with our work at Cell. We want, like, I would like for every school in the state to implement this framework. Okay. That's my ultimate goal. It's not an objective because, I can't necessarily measure that because the amount of schools, but the goal would be to have schools implementing this. And then our network that we're fortunate to work with is vast. And there's nothing like professional development amongst people who are actually doing the work. Like-minded people like yourself, Eddie, counselors together. When we have our convenings, we always have roll-alike time. So the principals or the admins get together, the counselors get together, the teachers get together, and then we have activities. But a lot of it is, what are you doing when this comes up? How are you handling this? Okay. Great example is one of the things that we deal with in schools is student apathy, right? So there is a great example of how one school in central Indiana, a little bit north of Indianapolis, Logansport, has tackled apathy, and they have what's called Fast Fridays. Okay, so if you have all of your homework in, you have a C or better. If you've not gotten in any trouble on Friday, guess what? You got to go home at, and I don't know the exact time, but you got to go home at 1:30. Everyone else has to stay and do various things, so they're not failing or they're not doing this. Right now, you're looking at me, Eddie, like, oh my gosh, how do they do that? How could we do this at New Albany? And as a former school principal, when I first heard about that, I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that. Right. But can you imagine the incentive for high school students? If I have all my work done, I get to go home early on Friday, Fast Fridays. So my point is, in talking about this with the network, is so and so at, Josh Blossom, who's the principal at Wabash High School, might have learned from Matt Jones, the principal who's retired now. Okay. But from Matt Jones and their team at Logansport, Fast Fridays, how do we implement that in Wabash? Or how do we implement this at Wayne High School? How do we implement this at Hobart? How do we implement this in Henryville, New Albany? You guys get the idea, right? So you have these network convenings and you have like-minded people who are all doing this work for kids based on this same framework. And then there's a sharing of ideas, and it's amazing what happens because of that sharing. The power of the network is the network. And so the sales part comes in. I wish everyone would come to our early college 101. I wish everyone would then come to our new schools workshop. And then we've added some things. Then they could implement in the best interest of their school community this framework. And then you have this group of educators who are coming in and saying, have you thought about this? That's what my vision would be. That's what my hope would be. That's where I would love for that to happen. So there you go. There's my my magic wand, my something I would love to see.
Well, I'm just grab my phone to text Dr. Jenkins, the principal at the New Albany High School, so that we can incorporate Fast Fridays. No, but the concept makes total sense. I get to serve as a senior lecturer, and in my class, I tell my students, look, if we get everything done, I'm not in the business to keep you here just to keep you here. And that incentive keeps them more engaged. They're on task. They're asking great questions. They're getting their work done. And at the end of the day, if that's what's happening, that's what we want as educators, right? Like, we're not just trying to keep them there to keep them there. Like, we have outcomes and goals. And if we're hitting that, let's get out of here. So, no, I absolutely love that. And I know that there's some teachers that would love Fast Fridays as well.
Well,
Now,
here's the thing on the Fast Fridays, the teachers are staying, and guess what they're doing?
looking at
They're
data.
working with the students who haven't met
Okay.
those. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So your teacher hours are the same, but that last hour and a half in the day is dealing with, hey, let's get you to this point so you're not here next week at this point, right? So it's a absolutely fantastic concept. And if Matt, like I said, Matt Jones were here, he would tell you that he got it from a school in Illinois. And you guys know that, again, networking is important. And if it takes a lot of work though, Eddie, can you imagine doing that with the Bulldogs? Like, how much work would several people have to get in to monitor that? But again, is that an adult problem or is that a student problem? And that's a question that we have to ask ourselves sometimes, and is it worth it to do this? But that's just one example. And that's how kind of our trainings and our networking works. Our convenings is getting people together. We have a structure, a framework, and then we get to work on how do we improve what it is that we're already doing.
No, that's
I
good
love it.
stuff.
Yeah, it's so good.
And one other question, Joe. I'm sorry, I'm gonna chime in here really quick. Is we've only got about 15 more minutes, so want to make sure that I get to some of the drawbacks of dual credit opportunities. Right, there are some things that could occur, and one of the issues that I've had with students is they've earned so many credits that it's become problematic at their school. Now, I'm a firm believer on keeping the perspective that there's good problems, right? And someone else would love to have that problem. But talk to me a little bit about that. Students that may be apprehensive of earning too many credits and it becoming problematic wherever they go to college.
So, I mean, you're familiar with the exception rather than the rule, and you already said that, right? So you nailed it right off the bat. If you're going to say that financial aid will become an issue after 150 hours earned, okay? What we would tell schools is be mindful of anything past 60, okay? And that's not because most of those students are going to have an issue. Joe, or excuse me, Eddie, the students that you've had, I'm sure there are a few, right? And there's always a few, but that's the exception rather than the rule. So again, you know, be mindful of anything past 60. That doesn't mean that anything past 60 is bad. It just means you have to be careful and remember, the ASG versus an associate's in a certain discipline like business or marketing or something like that. If you know that you're going to go into marketing, you should be just fine. If you're going, you did this associates in marketing and all of a sudden now you want to be a veterinarian, some of those classes maybe didn't help, right? And so be mindful of anything past 60. And that's the advice that we would give schools. And 150 hours is when your financial aid could become an issue.
No, that's really helpful. And I think that was one of the things I was looking forward to do is giving you a chance to address some of the skepticisms that are out there. Cause like any program, I mean, the one thing about innovation is, right, it draws skeptics, right? Because anytime you're innovative and you're thinking differently, and I think Indiana's doing a really good job in doing that, just like the Fast Fridays idea of trying to not just do the same thing we've always done, trying to be innovative and try to come up with ways to think a little bit differently to help students. So one of the things I've heard a few people kind of argue is that, high school students aren't really developmentally ready for that college level work. Like, let's say they go in, and again, it's the exception. Same thing applies here, but you think about a student that comes in that might be, a junior technically because of the credits. If they do map and they map directly to the degree, then all of a sudden that student's freshman year, technically what would have been their freshman year, they would be going into a 300 level course in their major. And are they ready for that yet? Depending on how the education. So how would you address that? How do you talk to people that might bring that up to you? How does Cell talk about that when that criticism or that question does come up?
There are several metrics that are used for incoming college freshmen to determine whether or not they can take 100 level courses, right? And so, for instance, Ivy Tech, there's a grade point average. They look at SAT scores, and that's what qualifies you to take it. And so, and if that doesn't work, then they also have something they call the knowledge assessment. Vincennes uses the AccuPlacer. Ivy Tech used to use it. It's another assessment. So there are all kinds of different measures that are telling schools, telling students that yes, they can take them. Okay. And so one of the core principles of our framework is rigor and working with teachers on what it means to have rigorous coursework. Rigorous coursework doesn't mean that instead of assigning 25 math problems, you're now assigning 75, but you're going deeper into thinking. And so part of our training and implementing and supporting schools is working with teachers on how to have a rigorous but supportive classroom. Hopefully, now again, Joe, back to your point, the exception and the rule, are there students where that's going to give them a setback? Yes, I'm sure there are students. However, the argument to that, the opposing side of that is, yeah, that could be true, but at the same time, they've qualified on the same basis as everyone else who's taken these courses. Just because they're a couple years older doesn't necessarily mean that they're a couple years more ready.
Well, and one of the things I would also just add in here, preparation for this podcast recording today, you sent me a wonderful PowerPoint presentation that you guys actually use in some of the trainings that you do with the high schools around the state of Indiana, and I was so impressed with that and the depth and just how much goes on with that. And so, kudos to you, kudos to Cell and the University of Indianapolis for the work that you're doing in that space, because I can only imagine, well, just by the quality of what I saw that you presented to me to help in my learning in this area. I mean, you guys are really doing some work that's probably really helping schools all the way around from every part of the state.
Well, thanks, Joe. And to that end, I have to give a tremendous amount of credit to two of my former colleagues that have since retired, Dr. Janet Boyle and Sandy Hillman, that both retired June 30th. And Janet's the former executive director of Cell. Prior to that, she was the assistant executive director and the director of early college. Early college as an initiative started in 2007 through a Gates grant. And it's the oldest initiative or longest running initiative that Cell has, but it's been passed along and developed over now 18 years. And so we are educators working with educators. And that's, if we've all been in professional development meetings before, hey, I'm from Indianapolis, here to help. What's the first thing people do is shut down, right? We are partners in this work, and we want to provide a quality service to the schools that we're fortunate to work with. And we're constantly looking for feedback, and we have the best interest of the people that we work with in mind. And I will say again, the best part of the job is going into different schools around the state to see what's happening, rural, urban, suburban, charter, private, all of it. It's seeing great people doing great work for great kids.
So looking ahead, what do you think is next for early college initiative in Indiana and just dual credit? I mean, what's the next big thing? Kind of what are you guys thinking about and talking to your partners with from Cell's perspective? And then what do you see? I mean, we've just come off of a legislative session, obviously, where anytime the legislature's in session, we always get a little bit nervous about what's going to maybe change with anything in education in the state of Indiana. So what's next for early education in the state?
for us is the new diploma that's coming out from high school. The high school redesign and working with schools on how that is being handled throughout the state. Also, the SEALs that are involved in that, and work-based learning, which is going to be a challenge for those students who are trying to get the Enrollment Plus seal, right? So we're looking at reaching out to partners and trying to come up with good ways of how to attack that through our network, through the people who are doing the work. So that's number one. Number two, uh, is funding. We're always looking for ways to fund our work to help schools. So, in terms of our organization, we have this rural early college network, the second iteration of it, that we are good to go. But we're always looking for partners to bring on to help us to support the schools that we work with. But the next big thing is just implementing the high school redesign, or helping schools to implement that, along with continuing to provide quality service and support of all of our students in our state.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I've only got a couple more questions for you, Steve. The first question, and I don't know if I'm giving you enough time to think about this, so I hate to put you on the spot, but it's the state of Indiana. We love our hoops. We got Greg Popovich, we got John Wooden, we got Larry Bird, we got Big O, we got Bob Knight. Give me the Mount Rushmore of Indiana basketball, according to Steve Combs.
Well, I'm a Alice, always been an Alice, grew up in Alice, a Vincennes Alice. So I'm going to give you number one for me is Doug Crook. Number two is Big O, Oscar Robertson, Larry Bird. I'm also going to throw in my favorite basketball player that ever played for me, Curtis Painter, former quarterback for the Purdue and for the Colts, as
Absolutely.
number four. And number five, I'm going to put in, oh my gosh, I've got a couple Vincennes guys in there, Oscar, Larry Bird, and who am I forgetting? You got to put Damon Bailey on there. I mean, Damon Bailey's my age, and I was able to play against him as a youngster. I saw him bend a rim before a game when I was a freshman. I was out of my mind, and I'm missing several, and I am on the spot, but I'm proud to list a couple of
See, that was your
Alice's with
opportunity
me.
right there, Steve, to say, hey, Damon Bailey couldn't guard me. Like, I was getting
Oh no,
buckets.
well yeah, that he could guard me, and he was a lot of fun to watch. I will say that we were very good, and the team that they ended up beating in the semi-state, Evansville Bossy, was the team that beat us in the tournament that year, with Ron Darrett and Andy Elkins, and they were also fantastic. So either one of those guys
The
could
more that you
also
learn, or the more that you know, or the things that you learn here on this podcast. Fun fact: as a basketball fan, Joe and I are New Albany High School alums, go Bulldogs. Not many people know that Mackey Arena at Purdue University is named after a Bulldog, former
I
athletic
did not
director.
know that.
There you go.
I did not know that. Yeah. In New Albany, in your area of the state, my goodness, there's some good teams that have come out of there. New Albany, Jeff, Floyd Central as of late. I mean, I'm going to again leave someone out, and someone's going to be mad, and I'm going to get a text. But oh my gosh, the
I
southeastern
mean,
part of the state,
think about Borden,
Silver
Silver
Creek.
Creek. I mean,
Silver
there's been,
Creek,
I
yeah,
mean,
so
goodness.
many. Principal at Henryville used to coach at either New Albany or Jeff. I know. I mean, you guys would be astounded. Not really, because you're Hoosiers and basketball fans. Even I haven't taught a high school class in 17 years, and I haven't been a coach for a very long time, but it comes up. Even Doug Harder, who is at the Commission of Higher Ed, is a former assistant basketball coach in the Columbus area. And so what happens, the first discussion that we have is, hey, have you heard about this kid that plays at so-and-so? So the first 5 minutes are a basketball discussion. But yeah, it's good stuff. That's part of us being who we are, right?
That's right. One time I had the opportunity. So one of my favorite things to do is find my ways in sports arenas and stadiums. I just like try to make my way, however, not
Boy,
illegally. I'm not breaking anything, but I try to ask somebody to get me in or whatnot. One time I'm at Cameron Indoor and I asked a gentleman, I'm like, look, I'm from Indiana. Can you let me in? I need to see this court. And he did, thankfully. And he walked me out onto the floor. And it felt like a movie. I'm going to be honest with you. You walk on that floor and you look up at those banners and you look at all that Coach K achieved, and the lights were kind of out, like it felt like a movie. And he was like, "Pretty impressive place, huh?" I was like, "Unbelievable." And he was like, "It sits 9,000 or whatever it was." And then he stopped himself and said, "Wait a minute, where are you from?" And I was like, "Indiana." He's like, "Y'all have high school gyms this size?" And I was like, "Yes, we do." Like that's who we are. Like we know our hoops. But my last question for you, Steve, very serious on this Friday. But who's the top dog of Indianapolis? Is it Blue or is it Grady?
Oh, come on. I mean, Grady all the way, top dog. I'm a
Top dog.
UIndy employee. Go Grady. And I know that UIndy has a football game coming up against Marion. That's on a Thursday night that I'm going to go attend. I love attending their events. So absolutely Grady, unless my daughter, well, no, I'm Grady all the way.
There we go.
Good answer. Good answer.
I've got a daughter that's going to be a senior in high school. So that could change based on where she chooses to go next year.
as a good dad would do, no doubt about it. So on my closing questions, I just kind of want to give you a chance to talk about what gives you the most hope when you think about the future of education in Indiana. Because when I pull up any article related to education in the state of Indiana, there's a lot of things that are swirling, higher ed related and K-12 related, even lower than that, pre-K and so forth. So as someone who's been in this field for so long and someone that knows a thing or two about education, what gives you still hope?
Joe, I already said it. When I walk into school buildings and I see great leaders, excellent teachers, and kids that are doing the right thing, and I see passion and enthusiasm, that gives me hope. It's from corner to corner, from the boot till up near Michigan. It's everywhere. Big props to all educators in our state. They're doing an extremely important job and they treat their jobs as professionals. That's what gives me hope, is the joy that I see with us. Joe, being part of the cell network is not something that's mandatory. We don't have a carrot and we don't have a stick, other than we are advising and working and trying to provide supports to our schools. Yet we have schools that are engaging in this work that is work because they know that's what's in the best. They know it's good for their kids and they don't have to do it and they're doing it anyway. And then to be able to see students who didn't think that they could go to college or get into post-secondary do that, that is a joy to see. And it's a joy to see folks like Eddie who are taking great joy out of working with these kids and getting them where they need to be. That's the hope. And yes, educators sometimes take a bit of a rap, but what I would say is that what I see when we visit is exceptional.
That's a great note. We have a lot of parents and students hopefully listening to this podcast, community members. If they just tuned in right now, what's the one thing that you want someone who listens to this podcast to take away with them, to share with others, to talk about in their community? What's the one thing about early college or anything we've talked about today?
Earning the Indiana College Core is worth it. You should guide your student to earn that currency, that credential value. It's available at most schools in our state and it's totally worth it. That's my number one thing.
Steve, thank you so much. We appreciate all your time and appreciate the University of Indianapolis, the Center of Excellence and Leadership of Learning, and all that you guys do for for the entire state of Indiana. So, thank you for your time and being so generous, and for taking those our questions today.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure to be here. And one last thing, if you guys would allow me, I have to shout out to our team, our early college team. We're small but mighty. Without the folks that I'm fortunate to work with on a daily basis, none of this gets done. So shout out to those guys who I know are going to watch this and critique me, but a great group of people to work with, as are all of our school partners. So thank you so much for having me.
Leave it to the former coach to shout out the whole team. That's good stuff right there. That's good stuff.
And as a coach, he's going to accept all that good criticism that he's going to give as
That's right.
positive feedback just to help him improve and get better, right, Steve?
That's right. That's part of being a leader, right? You throw out the umbrella. That's how it works.
Steve, thanks again. We'll be back to wrap up this episode. Thanks again. You're listening to the Next Step In podcast. Eddie, we just wrapped up a great interview with Steve Combs. I thought he did a great job, and it was really insightful about early college. You and I have been talking about it a little bit, and obviously you deal with it every day in your role as a high school guidance counselor. What'd you think of his thoughts?
Well, his approach and the information that he shared about dual credit opportunities in the state of Indiana. How about Indiana being first or second? But we're probably first. Nobody likes Idaho in dual credits earned. That honestly, I made a joke on the show, but that needs to be celebrated more. Like we need to let people know about that. We need to see that on billboards on 65. That's something to be proud of. I love that he talked about and shed more light on. It's not like an all or nothing thing with the ICC and the AGS. One of the things as educators that we need to do a better job is not only sharing that information, but also sharing information about the monetary benefit, like the payoff, because we talk about saving money, but sometimes we don't put that in proper context for students. So if I put a figure in front of them, an example might be if a student took for their dual credit, they took AP Lang, they took U.S. History AP, they took Pre-Cal and Spanish 3. Not only would they earn 26 credits, but they would have saved about $8,000 at IU Bloomington. That's unbelievable, right? So you put that in the monetary side of it. So no, I really enjoyed his insights. What I'm surprised of is leaving the Wizard of Westwood off of the Indiana Mount Rushmore. I mean, John Wooden, I feel like has to be on that list, or Greg Popovich, but he
You
disagreed.
did put him on the spot. I mean, to be fair, I mean, I feel like he was pretty convicted in his answers, but you did kind of put him on the spot. Maybe he would go back. I don't know. I
So
don't
right
know.
now he's hearing that and he's like just holding his forehead. He's like, I left off Pop. I left out Pop.
He's
Like,
gonna. It's all right. We'll bring him back next time. He
yeah,
he can make up for it.
yeah.
That's okay. It's
No.
no problem at all. One of the things I think that I was probably I was aware of, but I think it was really good to hear from him directly was just how well everyone's playing together throughout the state of Indiana right now, as far as the high schools and the colleges and the community college system through Ivy Tech, and it seems like everyone's really trying to work to find solutions that fit best for our students. And I think that that's really good. I also like that it wasn't a one size fits all approach to how this works in different communities, because I think that is important. I'm sure that some models may be more successful than others, but the one thing that I think we'll have to continue to watch and see is, just from my perspective of where I sit, is just seeing students who do come with a lot of high school credit, and some of them are just better prepared than others. And again, it's hard to paint just a broad stroke with that and just say that it was early college that that maybe didn't get them, the rigor wasn't quite enough for where they are now. But I think that that's something we're just going to have to continue to watch as things evolve, and we continue to work together, high schools and colleges and universities in the state of Indiana, to make sure that that rigor is there, and that students are set up for success so that they can save the funds like you talked about, but then also step right into their degree programs and be successful in those and get done earlier. I think that, I mean, that's and there's plenty of success stories out there like that. We just need to make sure that that's a story that can be replicated throughout the state and at all different levels.
No question. Another thing that we need to make sure that we highlight is not only are these dual credit opportunities providing students more freedom when their academic choices, majors, minors, and whatnot, but it could also provide that they take less hours when they're at a 2 or 4 year university so that they can expand more on co curricular opportunities. Maybe they can get more involved in student life. Maybe they can get more internships, externships. I've got students who study abroad now, and they wouldn't have had that opportunity without the dual credits.
That's a really good point. I never thought about that, about what opportunities that it actually affords you to be able to have more flexibility in your schedule. I think another thing, and I think that the way I understand it, the ICC, I think, helps with this, because it comes, like you said, as a package, of a credential, but it's making sure that those credits all get applied somewhere. And I know that the colleges and universities are really working on that to make sure that these courses do get applied towards the degrees, so they can count, right, and not just be kind of undistributed credit that just becomes a lot of elective courses. And he even mentioned, I think that was it 150 the number when it starts affecting financial aid. That was something I hadn't thought about until he mentioned it. And I work in higher ed. I hadn't heard of that yet, where that would come into play. A student that would have that much credit, but then had to go on, and none of that stuff really counted for anything, or didn't count for as much as they thought. And then they still had to, do 120 as a part of their degree program. That could put them in some financial aid jeopardy. So again, more kinks to work out, but it sounds like those conversations are happening, and that education's happening, even from your seat in the high schools, talking to students that maybe do have this amazing amount of credit that's kind of stacking up.
No question. And what he was referencing is the satisfactory academic progress prongs. And there's appeals that you do, if a student's in a situation. So if there's a parent listening that, like, I don't want my kid in that or that situation, there's a ways around that. And again, what a great problem to have. My student has too many college credits. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. Well, this has been a great episode. I hope that it's helpful, and I think that I really think that parents and students, and I hope that you'll share this with if you have other friends that you're listening to this podcast. You're like, I've got a freshman or sophomore. I've got somebody that's going to be in high school next year, and maybe this is the first time you're hearing about early college, or what taking college credit in high school, what it's all about. I hope that you'll share this link with them and share this podcast so that they can listen to us two knuckleheads, but someone that's smart like Steve Combs that can really help you with that, and be able to give you some insight into that before you actually have to start making those decisions for your student. You're not a knucklehead, right? You're good.
No,
I
I'm good.
figured you. I figured you wanted to defend yourself after I just called you out like that.
No, I'm good. I'll take that label. And I will say that any school that was left off of any Steve's list, please do not email him. He's a very busy man, and he didn't mean to offend anybody if he didn't mention your school.
You're always looking out for people, Eddie. I appreciate that.
No school received payment for endorsements on the Next Step In podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Well said. Well said. Well, that's a wrap for episode 3 of the Next Step In podcast. Thank you so much for joining us for this important conversation about the value of higher education in Indiana. And we hope that this episode gave you something to think about and will inspire you to share with others. If you did enjoy today's show, do us a favor. You hear it on every podcast you listen to. Follow, subscribe, share it with someone who might benefit from these discussions. And don't forget that this really is just the beginning. We're 3 episodes in. I don't know how we're already 3 episodes in, but we have many, many, many more inspiring guests, insightful topics, and real conversations coming your way in the weeks and months ahead. So make sure that you continue to stay tuned to our social media channels, and that you continue following us on YouTube and on your social or on your podcasting platform of choice. So until next time, this has been Next Step In, where education meets opportunity and the journey continues. Have a great week, Hoosiers.